and the quiet hills of Claiborne County, Tennessee, life moved with a steady, predictable rhythm. Among the rolling fields and small-town charm, there stood a structure that broke the serenity, the Claiborne Correctional Facility. A sprawling fortress of gray stone, reinforced steel, and curling razor wire, it held nearly 800 men whose pasts were scarred by theft, violence, and desperation. To the surrounding community, the prison was more than just walls and cells. It was a symbol of law and order, a stern reminder that actions carried consequences. But on the night of March 12, 2022, the illusion of control inside those walls was shattered. In a dim corridor cloaked in silence, a single act of desperation ignited a chain of events that would shake the prison system to its core. This was not just another crime in a place built to contain them. It was a cover-up, a deception, and a murder, all orchestrated by a man sworn to uphold justice. At the center of this storm was Officer Desmond Tate, a man whose life, on the surface, embodied discipline, faith, and family values. Yet behind the polished uniform and commanding voice, Tate harbored a secret so dangerous he chose blood over truth to keep it hidden. His actions would turn him from guardian to criminal, from authority to inmate. This is the story of how a respected correctional officer's double life led to the brutal death of inmate Rico Valentine, and how the fallout exposed the vulnerabilities of the prison system, the weight of repression, and the devastating cost of living a lie. The officer, a man of iron discipline, at 40 years old, Desmond Tate appeared to embody everything a correctional officer should be. Tall, muscular, and stoic, his presence alone commanded respect. A former soldier who served 2 tours in Iraq between 2003 and 2007, Tate carried the scars and precision of military life into his civilian career. When he joined Claiborne Correctional in 2008, his reputation grew quickly, an officer who never bent rules, who demanded order, who seemed immune to weakness. His personnel record read like a model example: commendations for quelling riots, praise during staffing crises, and a spotless disciplinary record. Beyond the prison gates, Tate's life looked just as pristine. He lived in Tazewell with his wife Latasha, a kind-hearted schoolteacher, and their 2 children, Marcus and Aaliyah. Their home, with its trimmed hedges, American flag, and basketball hoop in the driveway, radiated suburban stability. Neighbors saw him as dependable, a family man who coached Little League and served as a deacon at New Hope Baptist Church, where he delivered sermons about faith, discipline, and morality. But beneath this crafted image was a conflict he could not escape. Claiborne Correctional wasn't just where he worked, it became the stage where his most dangerous impulses played out in secret. The inmate, charisma behind bars, if Tate embodied rigid control, Rico Valentine represented its opposite. At 29, Valentine was magnetic, bold, and unapologetically himself. Even within the hostile walls of a medium-security prison, he carried himself with swagger and defiance. Openly gay in an environment where such openness often drew violence, he wore his identity as both armor and weapon. Some despised him for it, others admired his fearlessness. Before prison, Valentine thrived in Knoxville's nightlife, moving narcotics and living fast. His 2019 arrest for drug trafficking, part of a sting that netted 10 kilograms of cocaine and pills, earned him a 7-year sentence. But even in prison, his charisma gave him influence. Need contraband, protection, or favors? Valentine could arrange it. His network extended beyond the walls, and even guards found themselves negotiating with him. When Valentine and Tate's paths crossed in 2020, sparks flew, but not the kind anyone expected. From control to forbidden desire, initially, Tate despised Valentine. He represented everything Tate loathed: chaos, defiance, vulnerability. Tate used his authority to exert pressure, conducting endless cell searches, issuing reprimands, trying to break him down. Yet Valentine never flinched. Instead, he smirked, teased, and stared back with eyes that seemed to see through Tate's carefully constructed mask. What began as hostility morphed into something darker. Tate found himself drawn in, lingering too long during searches, watching Valentine more closely than he admitted. The tension finally broke during a lockdown in late 2020. In Valentine's cell, in the silence after lights out, confrontation gave way to a kiss, raw, desperate, and charged with years of repression. From then on, clandestine meetings continued. Hidden corners of the prison became their rendezvous spots. Tate convinced himself it was temporary, a mistake he'd soon stop. But the more he tried to pull away, the more entangled he became. Valentine, with his sly comments and unshakable confidence, pushed Tate deeper into denial and desire. The spiral of whispers, secrets don't survive long inside prison walls. Inmates noticed Tate's late-night visits, the lingering glances, the unusual favoritism. Whispers grew into rumors, and even other officers started to raise eyebrows. A veteran sergeant warned Tate, "People are talking. Watch yourself." But paranoia already gnawed at him. By early 2022, the pressure inside Tate's double life reached breaking point, compounded by a devastating personal revelation. The diagnosis that triggered rage. In February 2022, Tate underwent routine medical testing and learned he was HIV positive. The diagnosis obliterated his sense of identity: soldier, officer, husband, father, deacon, all of it now tainted by a secret he refused to confront. In his mind, there was only one person to blame: Rico Valentine. Though medical evidence would later prove Valentine was HIV negative, Tate's anger crystallized into obsession. He convinced himself that Valentine had ruined his life. And in his desperation, he began plotting a way to silence the man forever. Murder in C Wing. On March 12, 2022, during his evening shift, Tate carried out his plan. He walked into Valentine's cell, locking the door behind him. What passed between them in those final moments was part fury, part confession. Tate accused Valentine of destroying his life. Valentine, realizing the danger, tried to de-escalate. But the officer's rage was uncontrollable. In a single, fatal shot, Tate executed him, a bullet piercing Valentine's heart. He staged the scene as self-defense, radioing control with a calm report that Valentine had attacked him. His spotless record lent credibility, and within 48 hours, the prison cleared him. But inside Claiborne, whispers spread again. Inmates claimed they heard Tate's threats before the shot. Evidence began to unravel his story, and one investigator was determined to prove it. The investigation, Cracks in the Facade. Detective Janelle Harper, a relentless internal affairs investigator, dug into Tate's past interactions with Valentine. She uncovered reports of late-night visits, tampered security footage, and testimony from both inmates and officers. One lifer claimed he heard Tate say, "You can't ruin me, Rico. You've taken everything." The final blow came when forensic analysis proved the cameras outside Valentine's cell were deliberately disabled during the exact 7 minutes of the murder, using Tate's login credentials. And medical records showed Valentine had tested negative for HIV weeks before. Tate's supposed motive crumbled. Trial and downfall. In October 2022, Tate stood trial. Prosecutors painted him as a man consumed by shame, willing to kill to bury his secrets. Forensic ballistics, digital logs, and eyewitness testimony left little doubt. The jury convicted him of first-degree murder, and the judge sentenced him to life without parole. His wife and children, devastated by the revelations, walked away. His church disowned him. And the man once seen as the gold standard of discipline entered prison not as an officer, but as inmate TN 472819, a fallen figure now surrounded by those he once controlled, Lessons in Power, Shame, and Silence. The tragedy of Desmond Tate and Rico Valentine forces a reckoning with uncomfortable truths. It reveals how repression, secrecy, and stigma can corrode identity until destruction feels like the only escape. It highlights the systemic failures of prisons where boundaries between officers and inmates blur, and where marginalized individuals like Valentine face heightened risks. Ultimately, it's a story about the cost of lies, and how far one man was willing to go to protect the mask he wore. Welcome to the Echoes of Crime, where we explore the darkest corners of human behavior. This case isn't just about a murder in a prison cell. It's about shame, repression, power, and the price of silence. If you thought you'd seen every angle of human darkness, think again.